Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of Philosophic Perspectives on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. Here's the host of the broadcast. It's Arthur D. Schwartz.
Welcome back, everybody. Nice to be with you again. Well, we're in the midst of the political season, and I think it's pretty widely agreed that this is the strangest one in the memory of most of us. Perhaps the strangest one ever. I mean, really, what's going on is just unbelievable. Have you been watching those debates? Particularly on the Republican side. I mean, let's face it. It's just incredible. Anyway, we'll get to that. But I'm going to tie this whole thing into one of my favorite themes, which I've, I think talked briefly about in other shows. But it's my view that we should do away with the political parties. In fact, the name of this show is Crash the Political Party. And these are my thoughts, because basically the political party is a divisive force. I think it might have served a function in bygone times, but those times are long gone. George Washington, in his farewell address, warned against the formation of the political parties, and also James Madison did as well in the Federalist Papers. Well, so I'm going to get back to this a little bit, but I'm just looking at, I just want to kind of go over a few things that I've noticed in the campaign. Now, I'm assuming many of you saw the New Hampshire, before the New Hampshire primary, the Democratic debate with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And so this is what, listen, I got to tell you, I supported Hillary Clinton in the past election. I generally liked the Clintons. I was an early fan of Bill Clinton when he was running before he became president. And but this thing that I don't know. I mean, I think I'm leaning towards Bernie this time around. I think Hillary will probably win anyway. I'm certainly prepared to vote for Hillary, but I think I'm going to vote for Bernie because to make a statement and to push, to help, as a voter, push things in a certain direction. However, both of them underscore my issue. I don't like any political party. Now, in the New Hampshire, in the last debate, before the primary, I loved it when Hillary started railing against Bernie Sanders' audacity to criticize President Lincoln. President Lincoln, that's a Freudian slip. Wow. President Obama, because he had the audacity to question to criticize the incumbent president of his own party, and that a good Democrat running for the office of president shouldn't criticize the incumbent president if he happens to be a Democrat. And of course, Sanders just said, excuse me. I mean, I do think that we do have the right to criticize whomever we choose, and just the idea that Hillary Clinton would say that just underscores my whole point. I mean, that was, Hillary Clinton. I still like her. I'm probably, I'm assuming I'm going to be voting for her because she probably will get the nomination, it would seem. But there is a little bit too much effect. I mean, come on. What the heck does that mean? Bernie Sanders should be chastised because he was criticizing the policies of the president that he didn't agree with? This is the whole thing about parties. This is why parties really suck. They serve no function other than divide. They divide for no purpose. It's become a joke. They serve no purpose whatsoever. Like Washington said, what they do is they interfere with the conduct of a public discourse and the running of the government. So that's what Bernie said. But then again, that's what Hillary said. But Bernie is not too much better, because you have Bernie Sanders criticizing Hillary because she's not, quote unquote, progressive enough. So we got both of these loons casting labels about that you're not Democrat enough, you're not progressive enough. Give me a break. This is just a joke. And I'm actually not a Democrat. I am an independent that definitely leans Democrat. I mean, to be honest with you, I generally vote Democrat, but not always. I've often voted for Republican governor in Massachusetts. So, I mean, I consider myself to be an independent, but certainly I do lean Democratic. And, but, I mean, come on, what is this about? And then, of course, you have on the Republican side the Rush Limbaughs of the world shouting liberal this and liberal that and liberal garbage, I mean, bunch of nonsense. And so just trying to paint these broad strokes, and all they do is divide. And the principal vehicle for this division is the political party. Now, did you see the Republican campaign? The Republican debate, rather, out there in I guess it was in South Carolina, the side of the next primary, last week. Holy cow. I mean, now Trump. I mean, between Trump and Cruz, I mean, and Rubio, the whole mess of them. Oh my God! First of all, Trump he keeps going up in the numbers, but he's just like throws these epithets. He's insulting people. He's actually using profanity. I mean, he wants to be president of the United States. He's actually using. Well, I'm not sure who the F word and the S word or both or one or the other. Well, anyway, it's a fact. And I mean, I think they try to bleep it out. And I saw Trump say at one point that it was misrepresented because he actually paused and didn't say it. But at some points he has actually said it. And I mean, you're running for president of the United States. There should be some decorum, or not. I mean, what are they going to start having a mud wrestling match or something? I think that Republican primary almost was a mud wrestling match, and they were accusing each other. You're lying, you're this and that. I can't stand any of them actually. What's his name? Kasich. It was the most normal. That he was the only one that was sort of normal. I guess next one would be Bush, but I just can't stomach any of the Bushes. And but he got into mudslinging as well. I mean, they're just all calling each other names. It's pathetic. I mean, Clinton and Sanders looked fantastic compared to that. I don't know what you want to call that what that debate was like on the Republican side. I've never seen anything like it. So what's my point? Well, I think it has something to do with the parties. These people aren't idiots by nature. I think the party has, or the party framework, we've gone to a point where there's such artificiality that everyone has to prove that they're more Democrat or more Republican than the other, and they have to be pure, and that if you vote one way and not the other, if you're a Democrat and you make maybe a Republican vote or vice versa, that somehow you should be blamed. Is there something wrong with you? You shouldn't vote for somebody like that if you're a good Republican or if you're a good Democrat. What a bunch of nonsense. A bunch of utter crap. And you know what? It's ruining. I'm not exaggerating. It's ruining this country. It really and truly is. I don't think in the past. I know in the past it's been bitter elections and all that, but it wasn't so much along party lines, but personality. I mean, I know in the history of American elections, I think there were all kinds of nasty elections, but it wasn't around party lines. It was around issues and personal accusations about. I think was it was it Cleveland or one of them, about an illegitimate, as they used to call them, child or something. I mean, there's stuff going on. But today it's all about ideology. It's all about us against them, about conservatives versus liberals, about Republicans versus Democrats, about a lot of nonsense. I don't. It's complete and utter nonsense that is ruining this country. So, what is the solution? Well, let's go back to George Washington's farewell address, where he, warned against the formation of political parties. And so what I'm going to do here at this time is I'm going to, I do talk about it in my book. I have a very small section on it. And so as I've been doing as of late, I'm going to read this very small chapter. It's only 3 pages. It's called Eclipsing the Political Party. A democracy flourishes and thrives when it expects and encourages its elected representatives to possess moral toughness. What type of individual is weaker and softer than the party man? By referring to the party man, my intent is not to broad brush anyone affiliated with a political party, but I do refer to those who abrogate their intelligence to the party. A party man's mentality is a form of the herd mentality. That's a term from Nietzsche. New ideas and creative solutions are discouraged in deference to party loyalty and party ideology. Party loyalties are instinctively defensive or aggressive, whichever is better suited for service or submission to the party line. Moral toughness, on the other hand, requires an instinctive openness and self-reflectivity, or, to echo Socrates, a ready willingness to self-examine one's positions. While our quest to understand what is good, right, and true is never more than pragmatic and conditional, we must nonetheless pledge ourselves to that quest which, while antithetical to the party, is much in agreement with principles of any high-minded democracy. Moral toughness in politics is an unshakable commitment to help guide national conduct, its laws and its policies, without untoward bias, dogma, or ideology, as best as leaders and citizens are capable of comprehending what is right. The morally tough must follow an independent path, which may also be a popular path, provided that it is embodied with the courage of rational conviction. George Washington's farewell address, 1796, to the American people, warning them against the formation of political parties, as James Madison had done earlier in The Violence of Faction in the Federalist Papers, was largely ignored by the politicians and citizens of his day. But it has perhaps never been more powerful and more needed than it is today. So here I quote Washington. The common and continual mischief of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it in the interest and duty of a wise people to discourage and restrain it. It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riot and insurrection. That was George Washington. Wise then and wise today. It is not surprising that Washington's vision has been conveniently ignored by generations of by generations hypnotized into believing in the necessity of the political party. The basis of moral weakness is the abdication of reflectivity, self-examination, and moral probing in favor of lazy, anti-intellectual reliance on groupthink. Artificially hardened liberal and conservative formalities drone on endlessly over the radio waves like a monotonous drumbeat. Conservative radio talk show host Michael Savage says, liberalism is a mental disorder, but in actuality many sorts of preconditioned and oversimplified thinking, as exemplified by the herd of conservative knee-jerks on the radio, exhibit preoccupations and obsessions that resemble mental disorders. Dogma, be it closed-minded liberalism or closed-minded conservatism, is unhealthy for both individualism and for society. The only long-term cure is the eventual dehypnotization of the patient from his dogma and the rediscovery of the healing power of intellectual and political freedom. And a good place to start is to excise and eclipse the social cancer that is the political party. Excuse me for a moment. In the book, Democracy and the Organization of Political Parties, published in 1902, Moisey Ostrogotsky wrote that the institutionalized political party developed as a replacement to the old social classes that were being transformed by democracies. And so I quote, "The advent of democracy shattered the old framework of political society. The hierarchy of classes and their internal cohesion were destroyed, and the time-honored social ties which bound the individual to the community were severed. As the old fabric had to be replaced by a new one, the problem was to find out how the individual could be reunited to society. Some modern democracies have endeavored to solve it in the form of a disciplined and permanent parties." Now, Ostrogotsky recommended a deinstitutionalization of the political parties. The question now becomes whether in the 21st century there is any useful role for the political party. Other than obstructionism and the dumbing down of an electorate who, without parties, would have to actually study individual candidates before casting their votes, a presidential democratic system, such as that of the United States, votes for the person who will preside as president or political leader, compared to parliamentary systems that are based on party rule or party coalitions that comprise the majority in the government. In either system, the political party institutionalizes political divisiveness and acrimony, whereas a no-party or independent political system would encourage an environment in which individual lawmakers can agree or disagree, issue by issue, absent institutional pressure to toe the party line. Without political parties whose only interest is winning elections, legislators who are already under great pressure to balance personal conviction against casting votes that are representative of the collective will of their constituencies, would be unconcerned with party allegiances that interfere with the best interests of democratic governance. Following along the lines of Ostrogotsky's thinking, we can see a social evolution that has been progressively minimizing class divisions as it places more value on the integrity of the individual. Ironically, some of the individualism has morphed into an ideological groupthink along libertarian or Randian lines that is a faux individualism, which is really only another herd mentality of party or dogma that acts to inhibit expression of the self-other duality that pervade both social and individual life. Intrinsically, a political party, whether it is on the left, the right, or anywhere in between, is an insidious impediment to the individual expression by its interference with coalition building and coalition unbuilding that naturally galvanizes or ungalvanizes around the diverse issues of the day. An independent political system, combined with radical campaign finance reforms, would empower the American polity. Local, state, and congressional office holders would be obligated to constituency and conscience only. An independent, non-party, and publicly funded political system would replace corruptive funding processes that are tied to the political party and political lobbies. The influence of lobbying groups would no longer be financial, but would instead be exclusively derived from the legitimate voices of the respective memberships. Legislative activity and political coalitions that form around it would be organized eclectically through naturally intersecting interests that are free of artificial party division. Let open, nonpartisan primaries have ballots that are free of party labels or identification other than that of the candidates' names. And if there is no clear majority, let the top two finishers complete in a runoff election. In U.S. presidential elections, a series of winnowing elections would lead to a runoff election unless the winner has a clear majority, in which case a runoff would not be needed. Let all political advertising appearing on broadcast media be financed publicly or donated by broadcast stations. Let society encourage a return to straightforward political discourse by discouraging to the extent possible all political commercials and advertising save for unembellished talk, i.e., conversations or speeches by the candidates and their respective supporters. For the sake of encouraging intelligent discourse in the electoral process, and intelligence is indeed the bedrock of freedom. The basic conservatism of straight talk in politics needs to be embraced. We can continue to enjoy a political system that discourages moral toughness and encourages a political discourse dominated by pabulum and the party line. An extremely hopeful development is afoot in American politics, as nonpartisan primaries seem to be gaining some momentum in California, Washington, and other states. I have long advocated nonpartisan qualifying primaries in which candidates run without any party affiliation. If one candidate receives over 50% of the vote, she or he wins. But if no candidate receives over 50%, a final runoff election will decide the winner. This type of electoral system has been used in U.S. city governments for many years and is an outgrowth of the progressive movement to help fight party corruption, and has also been used in various forms in democracies around the world. However, political parties generally continue to play important roles in politics. In addition to guaranteeing that the winner of a democratic election earns over 50% of the vote, the system advocated here would clear away social blockages to political empowerment by prohibiting outright the institutional slating of candidates, and by instituting public financing as the primary, if not exclusive, source of funding political elections. While organizations of all variety would certainly support political candidates and act as donation-free lobbyists that endorse individual candidates, there would be no slating of candidates and no labeling of party or other group identification on the ballot. The only names on the ballot should be the names of the candidates. An empowered, nonpartisan, and independent political system would, as such, require a political culture that inspires confidence in the art of informed political discourse, freed of party biases, and made freer by a broad diversity of opinion. So that was the chapter, section 2.19 in my book, Eclipsing the Political Party. And so you can see that, in my view, the political party is just a divisive, artificial mechanism that is designed to promulgate the power of particular groups. Now, hold on one second here. Okay, there's a point I wanted to make, and it's actually slipping my mind right now at this time. In any case, there is a progress afoot in California, like I said, in some other states, and I believe that with the growth of a number of independents in the country, it actually is going to become more and more likely. Now the thing about Bernie Sanders, he actually, at most of his political career, has considered himself to be an independent. But unfortunately, he's an independent, but he's really basically a socialist. I don't think he's actually affiliated with the Socialist Party, or I think he's affiliated with some parties that are closely affiliated with the Socialist Party. That's okay. I mean, when Trump called it communist or something, I mean, Trump is just being an idiot. And he's, if let me tell you this, if Sanders is a communist, then Trump is a fascist. So, I mean, guys like Trump, they are so mean-spirited. Talk about power, talk about bloating. I just think about him. It gets my ire up. It really does. All this name calling. You know what name calling encourages? More name calling, like I'm doing right now. But if he's calling Sanders a communist, then I'll call him a fascist, which he might well be. I mean, it is. I mean, the way he's just throwing things around and throwing threats around, and he can do this and he can do that. I've never seen anything like it in American politics. Anyway, the thing about Sanders that I do like is, I think he has that independent spirit. But when we get to the next section, the second half of this show, I'm going to talk about ideological positions or radical positions and the place they have in an independent, non-partisan, purely independent political system without any political parties. Because, you see, ironically, in such a system there will be more radicalism, but the radicalism would not be unitary. There would be some areas where it's a radical, let's say, on one side of the spectrum, and in other areas on the other side. What happens, and that's natural, because all these parties, or not all parties, but a lot of the parties do have certain things that we find ourselves agreeing with. That's natural. That's what would happen in an independent political system. The different legislators, who are all independents in this system. In other words, they're not actually affiliated with. There will not any longer be any parties to affiliate with. They will naturally coalesce, and that coalescence will see radical right-wing / left-wing in some degrees or the other in different situations, which is fine. The problem with the ideological parties is that everything is one way. Everything is left-wing. Everything is right-wing. Everything is monopolistic. Everything has to be libertarian. And so that's when we have a breakdown, because that's not natural. That's not the way. That's not really the way economics works, or politics works, or anything works. There are different schemas. There are different ways. There are different methods. There are different tonalities. There are different economies, different economic factors that make the different ethical factors, different political factors that make one system more appropriate than another in different sectors of the economy and at different times in different situations. So at this break, we're gonna take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll be back and we'll continue the conversation.
In Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms, Arthur D. Schwartz presents an ethical theory that is a framework for evaluating moral conundrums that go beyond legalistic rulemaking, dogmatism, and preconditioned thinking. The book is as much an ethical framework for unconventional ideas as it is for staying with convention. Ethical Empowerment is a manifesto of non-doctrinaire perspective. Ultimately, the hypnotic thinking of ideology and dogmatism can only be overcome by returning to the true source and essence of morality, which is nothing less than universal love. Discover how the philosophically liberating approach of the ethical empowerment can be applied to the range of ethical, social, and political controversy. Read about a plan to eliminate all political parties. Entertain the possibility of an overhaul of the patent system and its replacement with a system that rewards inventors while eliminating monopolistic control of patents and technological suppression. Many other transformative ideas are discussed in the book, including issues related to the monetary system, real estate, scientific paradigms, and a rational approach to conspiracy theory. While ethical empowerment will challenge your mind to consider new perspectives, the ethical challenge is always to keep the diversity, depth, and breadth of perspective within the boundaries of love. Ethical Empowerment is available at Amazon.com and most online booksellers in both print and e-book editions.
Hi, this is John Mayle, and you're listening to ArtistFirst Radio.
This is Arthur D. Schwartz. You know, beliefs and disbeliefs can be very powerful. Much like philosophy, hypnotism is concerned with belief. Hypnotherapy, a practical application of hypnotism, may largely be described as the practice of removing false beliefs that form mental blocks to success, to happiness, and to well-being. In my hypnotherapy and philosophical counseling practice, I combine my work in philosophy with hypnotism in order to clear mental blockages that can occur on both conscious and subconscious levels. A mental block may be conscious or subconscious and can be expressed, for example, in the form of anxiety, low self-esteem or low motivation, bad habits, tobacco habits, weight gain, low performance, and much more. If you are interested in using hypnosis and the power of the mind to overcome mental blocks and barriers that have emerged in your life, please feel free to give me a call at 617-964-4800 or visit www.integralhypnosis.com. That's INTEGRAL, hypnosis.com.
You put your keys between your knuckles. Someone approaches you and you cross to the other side of the street. You lock the door behind you, maybe twice. Now you feel safe. You think you've made the right choices to protect yourself. Think again. Because if you're not eating right, if you're not active, or if you smoke, you're putting yourself at risk for disease. Learn to protect yourself from yourself at everydaychoices.org. A message from the American Cancer Society, American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, and the Ad Council.
Are you a person who enjoys intellectual social interaction and finds digging deeper into the nature of things, from big issues to everyday life, an important part of the pleasure of life? Social Philosophizers is a Boston area social club for those who desire intellectual socializing. It's a club for both singles and non-singles, and for anyone who finds intellectually mingling to be the best form of social mingling. The club offers a variety of interesting venues such as philosophical get-togethers in private venues, book discussions concerning literature and philosophy, topical discussions over brunch or dinner, guest speakers, theater, after-work mixers, even long philosophical ruminations along nature trails or city streets, and more. If you live in the greater Boston area or occasionally spend time in the area, you can choose a cost-effective membership level that's right for you. Basic membership is free. Find the link on Arthur's Philosophical Perspectives show page at ArtistFirst.com or just search SocialPhilosophizers.com. We hope you'll join Social Philosophizers today. That's SocialPhilosophizers.com. You are listening to Philosophic Perspectives on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Past shows are archived. Pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. Here he is, the smartest guy in the room. It's Arthur D. Schwartz.
Thank you, Dad. Thanks for holding on there. Now, I wanted to comment. Scott and I were talking during the break, and I remind myself when the subject came up. We have this guy Rubio, who is very inexperienced. He's been in the senator for less than 2 years, much like Obama. Now we had Jimmy Carter was the first one to start this. Becoming president with almost very little vetting, you might say, by the general public. And I don't really know how long can we continue. I mean, I'm not saying Rubio will be elected. I don't think he will at all. But let's say he were to be elected. I mean, how many times can we elect a president without who's basically unknown and has very little experience in politics on a national level? I mean, I just compare it to a corporation. Would a General Electric or an Apple or any other large corporation, Disney, hire somebody for as CEO with comparatively the dearth of experience that we seems to be coming? But the other one was George W. Bush. I mean, other than being the son of another president, he got on his daddy's coattails. He became governor of Texas, and he was governor for a term. And I think he was elected after. I don't think he finished 2 terms. I think he left. It was a term and a half. He had very little government experience, other than being watching his father, I guess. So this is really becoming like a really bad habit, and I don't think we can get away with it indefinitely. I mean, one can arguably say we're already screwed by the inexperienced individuals that we're putting in the most powerful office in the world. So anyway, that's just a point I wanted to make. Again, this is a creature of the primary system. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I'm old enough to understand the history of how this all happened. It happened going back to 1968. I was a supporter, just a kid, of Eugene McCarthy. He opposed. It was the same year that Bobby Kennedy ran, and Bobby Kennedy was killed, and that during in the California primary of '68. But it really started to happen because of that, of the fact that Clinton was such Lyndon Johnson was such an unpopular president, and the party system seemed to be rigged. And so the next time around, George McGovern, who was closely allied with Robert Kennedy and was, of course, with McCarthy in terms of the anti-war movement, anti-Vietnam War movement. And it was McGovern that really opened up the primary system so that the conventions became actually democratic, because before then it was the term was the nominee was selected in the smoke-filled rooms. The phrase used to be. And I actually was as a kid. I went down to Miami in the convention to see. That's when McGovern was nominated, and I went down there as basically I was for McCarthy. McCarthy actually ran as an independent. That's right. Eugene McCarthy actually ran as an independent that year. But anyway, I was involved with that, and I ended up going down to observe the convention. I mean, I didn't get inside or anything, but I was part of it because I was there. And so what happened is then suddenly what used to be the smoke-filled rooms became this open process of primaries, and everything was totally democratic. And it was great. I mean, I thought it's a wonderful thing, but to be perfectly honest about it, over time I've become a little bit weary of it, and I see how it works, and it leaves the fact that, for example, in a parliamentary system, it's not the smoke-filled rooms, but the leader kind of rises up from the bottom to the top, and in a kind of a long process, gets into a leadership position and ultimately becomes the prime minister. In this country now, because everything's opened up, you go anybody with a nice face and who talks nice can get elected. And I just think that that's not really the best way to go about it. Really, I mean, I just don't think it's the best way to go about it. And that's the thing too about democracy. I mean, democracy is the best system in the world, but we have to recognize its weaknesses and its dangers and compensate for it. And so the way we've gone about now nominating the candidates by the party system is, I think, quite very dangerous, to be honest with you. Now, in the independent system that I'm talking about, of course, that wouldn't really be an issue, because all the candidates would be out there and they'd be running in these primaries. And it's true, you can argue that it would still allow for the Rubios and the Obamas and the Jimmy Carters of the world, who are not very well known, to catch on and get elected. Yeah, that is possible. However, I think it would be different, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But there's something about being the darling of a party and getting a small cadre of supporters, and that begins to multiply. Because the system that I'm talking about, there's no parties. Remember, the primary elections won't be party elections. They will be general elections. General elections, not just a party election. So each primary would be a general election where everybody who's eligible to vote could vote. And the dynamics there would, I think, work towards winnowing out a candidate who has the breadth of experience, the history, the vettedness that it wouldn't have been the candidates that are getting nominated now. They wouldn't have an opportunity to come up so quickly, because the whole the conservatives and liberals and Republicans and socialists and whoever else, they'll all be voting. And so I think it would work against getting these, rocket ship darlings that suddenly come out of nowhere and actually can be catapulted into office. I don't think it would work that way, because everyone would be voting, not just narrow party. Because in a lot of these primaries and a lot of these caucuses, I mean, they're very, very unrealistic, particularly the caucuses. I mean, this is a very unrealistic thing. You have like maybe 10% of the people voting. I mean, a tiny, like the Iowa caucus, a very small percentage of people actually go out there and vote. So that wouldn't be happening in the series of winnowing primaries. Not these aren't party primaries. They would be general primaries, open to they will all be general elections that would winnow out a candidate at the end. So I wanted to make that point, but I wanted to segue there from that into really explaining the philosophy that's really behind this proposal for a purely independent political system, independent of parties. And what would happen is, if you had, let's just take the Congress, and in the Congress of the United States, in both the Senate and in the House of Representatives, every member would be free of any party affiliation. There wouldn't be any special interest. There wouldn't be any actually, with a public financing system, there wouldn't be any donations that would make the candidate beholden to special interests. I got a comment about, again, Hillary. I mean, I love Hillary Clinton. I mean, I voted for her to pass the primaries. I wanted her to be elected last time. But in that last debate, and what she was asked about all these, after she left the Secretary of State's office and she did all these speeches, and it was wondering about all that, she made lots and lots of money giving speeches, and they wanted a transcript. People wanted a transcript of her speeches to these special interest groups. And she just kind of left it off, said, well, she'll look into it, blah, 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 blah. Oh, come on, Hillary. Give us a break. Come on. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I think unless she can prove otherwise, I think it's probably safe to say that she was saying things to those groups that they wanted to hear. In fact, I did hear a comment by someone who was at one of the speeches and said, well, the person we heard was very different than the person that said the things she said there at the debate the other day. So the system we're talking about would be free of special interests, free of political parties. Then what happens? How would a totally independent House of Representatives or Senate function? It would be very different, because then you have something that's actually akin to nature, that to the nature of human beings, of intelligent human beings who share opinions with others on some things and not with other things. That in the Congress there will be temporary coalitions forming for a particular bill, and when that bill gets voted in or not, rejected, they will move on and form coalitions around other bills. And you would have a natural coalescence, a harmonic coalescence. That's the nature of the world, that we're when we're going to, as a species, as a society, as a world society, I believe, we will be empowered by having diversity, e pluribus unum, one out of many, where there will be differences, but the differences are not in conflict with one another, because when you're the majority is coming from all sides, not artificially with blocks of Republicans and blocks of Democrats. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid on the face of it that no one can actually defend it with a straight face. Because you know what? They're bought hook, line, and sinker. And I tell you what, this is what really got me to say that I'm basically going to, right now say, as of right now, I support Bernie Sanders. Because he said the same thing. I was listening to talk. He talked about how, the Congress is just completely corrupt. So I don't agree with everything about Bernie Sanders as well. I'm concerned that he might be a little bit too, knee-jerk as a socialist. But he does have an independent streak. And when I was listening to talk, he said some of the things that I probably sounds like, what I'm talking about. So I share those opinions with him. And he is an independent. He has been independent politically. So anyway, the point I'm getting is you would have a coalescence around certain issues of a diverse groups that will be supporting it, very unlike what we have in our so-called two-party system. Because what gets passed will be a combination of individuals that are uninterrupted, uninterfered with, unadulterated by artificial party divisions. It would just be intelligent men and women deciding to agree on some things and disagree on the others, and then the resulting legislation that would form would be a reflection of that. And you wouldn't see the same old, party line voting for one side or the other, bills getting forward because all the Democrats voted no or the yes, and the Republicans voted no, and vice versa. And it's just this stupidity that is being passed along as some kind of a functional democracy, because it no longer is. And so it would be a true harmonic system that will allow democracy truly to rise to the top. Right now, democracy tends to sometimes sink to the lowest common denominator. But in the system, the kind of system that I'm talking about, it will empower society so that we will have more statesmen and stateswomen than politicians. because they're not beholden to a party, always trying to get the party line, always trying to keep their fundraising in tow, and so forth and so on. They would just be elected and vote their minds as they see fit, representing their constituencies and their conscience. So a complex, diverse society can achieve unity by this natural harmonic balancing without the interference of the political parties. And the institutionalization of these parties threaten the United States. I think they threaten all free societies. Now, so I talked today. My subject today was crash the political party. To promote the system of this independent political system, a no-party system, you might say. But actually, in my book on section 2.44, Beyond Disunity, I grouped the political party along with two other institutions, which would be religion, institution broadly speaking, and nationalism. Those are the three major disunities, in my view. And there's lots of other disunities also, but those are the three I focused on in that section. And because when you look at it, political parties, which create dysfunction in the civil administration of a democracy, religion, well, that's obvious. You see that, there's some good things about religion, but religion is such a force of evil. Not all religions, of course, but it can become that, like we're seeing it, in Daesh, those criminals. And we've seen many other times. Let's face it. The problem with religion is that once you accept a dogma that goes straight to the supposed master of the universe, your view of God, whatever it might be, and if you accept it to the extent that you now reject any other point of view, if you do so, you're a heretic, or there's something wrong with you, or that you don't deserve to be, or you can be discriminated against. So, obviously, religion has that potential. I'm stating the obvious. I think everyone knows that. Even religionists know. People who are religious know that. Not that they're that way, but it tends to, the more fundamentalist sects on all religions, not just the Islamic. Obviously, all religions. There's an ample example of this. And again, once again, it's the reason is pretty clear. Because if you think you know the mind of God, and then you think that means you can do anything you want because you figure you're justified, which is basically pretty much the root of insanity. It's like the schizophrenic that show up in mental hospitals, thinking that they're Jesus Christ, that kind of thing. It happens all the time. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's what I mean. That's unfortunately that's a phenomenon that happens in mental institutions. So I would say this obsession with the fact that you think, if you're a fundamentalist, that you know the mind of God, you know that you can decide that this person should die or this or that, or should be treated horrifically because somehow you think that's what God told you to do. That is basically the definition of insanity. So we have obviously a disunity there, and the nation state. Well, that's going to be the last disunity to fall, of course, but eventually it will, because when all these other disunities fall by the wayside, and not just these three disunities, there's other blocks I talk about. I've mentioned the real estate system and other things. I've mentioned currency markets and other things. There's many disunities, but I focus principally on these three in this in the chapter I mentioned, Beyond Disunity, Chapter 2, Part 2, Section 44. 2.44. that it's disunity. It's the political party. It's religion and the nation state. And the nation state will be the last to fall, because once those other disunities are cleared away, then the need for political boundaries would recede, because it would become perfectly clear that cooperation is so much better than violence. Needless violence, needless disunity, needless division caused by political parties, caused by religion, and caused by artificial divisions in territories. The day will come in the future, I am sure, where that's what the world will be like. It will be a cooperative society, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And but before the nation state falls, these other disunities will have to fall first, and then the world could truly be united, but not as some kind of a monolithic, impractical, impossible, coercive, world government, but rather a decentralized, cooperative world where we see each other as one, and we freely help each other, just like a family would, because we are, after all, when all is said and done, the human family. So anyway, I think that's about it for today. And as always, I enjoy doing it, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. So this concludes tonight's broadcast. Now, for links to my book, Ethical Empowerment, my philosophical counseling and hypnotherapy practice, and the Social Philosophizers Club, please visit arthurschwartz.com. The full title of my book, Ethical Empowerment, is Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms. It can be purchased on at Amazon and most other online booksellers. And so this is Arthur D. Schwartz reminding you to live well and think deeply. So until next time, good night, everybody.